The sad truth is, The Handmaid's Tale is already happening in some parts of the world, hence Trump in our thumbnail. But is there a possibility for the world to turn into a dystopian society in the future? Well, let's find out. The show is based on reality. As we already mentioned, The Handmaid's Tale includes a lot of events that, unfortunately, happened and are still happening in our world. The show is set in an awful, dystopian society no one would ever want to be a part of. A world where a group of evil individuals have taken over most of America and turned it into Gilead. The author of the book, Margaret Atwood, drew a lot of inspiration from events that have already happened at one point in our civilized society. Maybe most of you lead a perfectly normal life, and thus you have nothing to worry about. But some people in the world are actually living the nightmare of the series, and yes, that's heartbreaking. Also, with the current situation of our world, a lot of people believe the future will take a wrong turn, and our already broken world will turn into something terribly awful. Atwood has, in fact, explained why Gilead feels so possible for most fans of the show and the novel. The famous author started writing her book way back in 1984, and she didn't want to write a fictional story. Instead, she wanted her book to be based on real people and events that have already happened. Quote, "If I was to create an imaginary garden, I wanted the toads in it to be real," she said in an interview with the New York Times. "One of my rules was that I would not put any events into the book that had not already happened in what James Joyce called the nightmare of history, nor any technology not already available. No imaginary gizmos, no imaginary laws, no imaginary atrocities. God is in the details, they say. So is the devil." In the novel, Gilead occurs once infertility appears, more precisely, when powerful men and women cannot have children. Then, Gilead comes up with what we call the sickest idea ever. Or, as Gilead calls them, quote, "Women who have done sins but can give birth are assigned to give birth to children for powerful people who cannot." Let's get into the details, shall we?
Got her! No! No! Take her! No! Please!
A real-life witch. You see, most of the events the novel draws inspiration from have happened a long time ago. For instance, Atwood has already confirmed that her book takes inspiration from the Salem witch trials and everything that happened to these poor women back then. She, in fact, used one specific story when writing the novel. The story is about a 17th century New England resident, Mary Webster. Webster was involved in one of the most talked about witchcraft cases linked with the Salem witch trials. For quite some time, Mary was a church leader in the Puritan town of Hadley, Massachusetts. But once she fell ill, the locals assumed she was a witch, and they've come up with one of the worst possible solutions. Prior to hanging her as punishment, she suffered a long-going abuse. But Mary survived. Her entire story is told in 1689's memorable Providences. The Red Robes. The red robes of the Handmaids are also inspired by real-life events and people. There are, for instance, the Catholic nuns. The thing is, there are a lot of women suffering the, quote, "must wear this" treatment today. There are the Amish, people who insist their women should wear long black dresses every single day with coverings on their heads as well. Then there are the Muslim women who are required to wear a burqa, niqab, or hijab. The Quran calls for men and women to, quote, "cover and be modest." Homosexuality. In The Handmaid's Tale, if someone is homosexual, the Gilead refers to them as a, quote, "gender traitor." This results in that same person being punished, unless that person is a woman who could bear children for the rich, powerful commanders, and their wives. This one is easy for us to link with nowadays society, as there are a lot of countries that have laws criminalizing homosexuality. In fact, according to a BBC report made in 2021, 69 countries still have these laws. Season 4 and the 2020 presidential election. Season 4 of the series started filming in March 2020. The release date was supposed to fall on next year's presidential election, but the pandemic stood in the way, and the premiere was delayed to April 2021. During the presidential campaign, A lot of critics have said The Handmaid's Tale is a reflection of what happens in America. Some people even said that the show is a dystopian story of our time. The showrunner, Bruce Miller, told to The Hollywood Reporter that the show's writers and executive producers were working on the 4th season with a post-Trump era in mind. Abortion restrictions under Gilead regime. As we already said, the series follows a plot where women have no rights whatsoever, and as they are expected to give their child to another couple, abortion rights are non-existent. But according to the story of the novel, this wasn't always the case. In the novel, doctors who were involved in abortions were hanged. The sad truth is that no abortion rules still exist, even in 2022. According to research done by Guttmacher Institute, over 40% of women around the world aged 15 to 44 live in a country where abortion is banned. El Salvador, Nicaragua, and the Dominican Republic are some of the countries where this procedure is not illegal. If a patient shows signs of abortion, the doctors are required to call the police and tell the name of the patient. These rules also apply to women who suffered abuse. The government simply doesn't care how these women got pregnant. Make a baby for Christmas. In an interview with Penguin, Atwood talked about her experience seeing a headline of a newspaper that asked its readers the following, quote, "Make a baby for Christmas, MP tells Canadians." An article that again leads us to the question of what kind of society are we living in? Are we as civilized as we want to be? We've mentioned some of the awful things that still occur in our world, but we weren't able to mention all of them. As you already know, there are a lot of countries where women live the same way as their predecessors lived in the 18th century. Could The Handmaid's Tale come true? Since the author based her book on events that have already happened in our society, we can't help but wonder, how far are we from a dystopian society? Quote, "No, it isn't a prediction, because predicting the future isn't really possible. There are too many variables and unforeseen possibilities," Atwood said in an interview with the New York Times. Let's say it's an anti-prediction. If this future can be described in detail, maybe it won't happen. But such wishful thinking cannot be depended upon either. The series shows a scenario with dark and provoking dystopia, and thus, we question ourselves, do we really try to make the world a better place? Then again, we can't stop thinking of the time when Commander Fred, a character played by Joseph Fiennes, said, quote, "Better never means better for everyone. It always means worse for some." What do you guys think? Is there a possibility our world could turn into a dark dystopian society in the future? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed our video, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss any of our videos in the future. As always, thank you for watching.